This video is not about rumors, propaganda, or social media insults. It is about facts, public records, statements, actions, and the real consequences of words spoken during a national tragedy. Because Sheikh Ahmad Gumi is not just a cleric with opinions. He is a man whose voice has intersected directly with Nigeria's bloodiest insecurity crisis. And to understand why his name provokes anger, loyalty, fear, and debate all at once, we must look clearly at what he has done, what he has defended, and why millions of Nigerians feel betrayed by his posture at a time when empathy should have leaned first toward victims, not perpetrators. Because while villages were being emptied, highways turned into hunting grounds, and families bankrupted by ransom payments, Gumi chose a path that challenged the emotional and moral center of the nation, beginning with his persistent insistence that armed bandits should be negotiated with rather than confronted. An idea he pushed repeatedly in interviews, sermons, and policy discussions, arguing that bandits were driven by poverty, exclusion, and injustice, rather than criminal intent. A framing that immediately angered communities who had watched loved ones killed, women violated, and children dragged into forests. Because to them, the issue was not abstract policy failure, but raw violence. And when Nigerians expected religious leaders to speak comfort to victims, Gumi instead redirected compassion toward the men holding guns. A choice that shaped every controversy that followed, because he did not stop at advocacy from a distance. He physically entered bandit territories, visiting camps inside forests where the Nigerian state itself struggled to assert authority, meeting armed men face to face, listening to their demands, and later recounting these encounters publicly. An act that shocked the nation, not just because of the security implications, but because of the symbolism. A cleric sitting comfortably among men accused of mass murder, while victims had no such access. And when questioned, he defended this visit unapologetically, insisting that engagement was the only way to stop bloodshed. Yet many Nigerians asked a painful question that was never answered. Why dialogue with killers seemed easier than justice for the killed? And this sense of imbalance deepened when Gumi repeatedly referred to some bandits as misguided Muslims, a phrase that ignited outrage across religious and ethnic lines. Because while he claimed it was a theological approach meant to reclaim lost souls, victims heard something far more dangerous: a moral softening of responsibility. A suggestion that ideology or grievance could dilute accountability for crimes that included executions, mass kidnappings, and sexual violence. And in a country already fractured by suspicion, that language poured fuel on existing fires, especially when combined with his public accusations that the Nigerian military was biased against Fulani communities. Statements that landed like a grenade in a nation relying on overstretched security forces. Because while abuses by soldiers should always be investigated, broad claims made without transparent evidence risked undermining morale and validating narratives used by violent groups to justify retaliation. And beyond insecurity, Gumi's ideological positions expanded into governance itself, as he repeatedly criticized Nigeria's secular structure, arguing that secularism had failed and that Islamic principles should guide leadership and law, a stance that alarmed many Nigerians who see pluralism as the fragile glue holding the country together, especially Christians and moderate Muslims who fear that religious absolutism, even when framed as moral reform, can easily slide into exclusion. And perhaps no statement encapsulated public fury more than his suggestion that bandits should be compensated with land, grazing routes, and resources in exchange for peace. Because to victims whose farms were destroyed and daughters abducted, this sounded like a reward system for violence, a message that crime pays if it is violent enough. And this is where the anger hardened, because Nigeria is a country where law-abiding citizens struggle daily without state support. Yet those who terrorize communities were being discussed as potential beneficiaries of state concessions. And internationally, questions around Gumi's ideological alignment grew louder when reports emerged that he had been restricted from traveling to Saudi Arabia, a development that surprised many Nigerians and reinforced the argument from fellow Islamic scholars who had already publicly rejected his positions, stating clearly that Islam does not justify the normalization of criminal violence or the moral reframing of banditry as social protest. Yet, despite backlash from victims, clerics, security experts, and civil society, Gumi's influence did not fade. Instead, it evolved, especially online, where many young Nigerians frustrated with corruption and state failure embraced his blunt, confrontational style, seeing him as anti-establishment and fearless, a man willing to say what others avoid, even when they disagreed with him. And this digital following explains why his statements continue to dominate national discourse. Because in a country where trust in institutions is collapsing, anyone who speaks confidently against the system attracts attention. But attention is not the same as accountability. And this is the core of the national unease. Because Nigeria's insecurity crisis is not just about guns in the forest. It is about narratives, legitimacy, and whose pain is prioritized. And when a religious leader consistently appears to center the grievances of perpetrators over the suffering of victims, it creates a moral rupture that words alone cannot heal. And so Sheikh Ahmad Gumi stands today not merely as a controversial cleric, but as a symbol of a deeper Nigerian dilemma. The struggle to balance dialogue with justice, mercy with accountability, and religion with the responsibility of a secular state. Because peace built on appeasement without consequence is fragile, and security without moral clarity collapses into chaos. And until Nigeria resolves that tension, voices like Gumi's will continue to divide the nation, not because they speak loudly, but because they force an uncomfortable question Nigeria has yet to answer. Who truly matters most when violence becomes normal? The men with guns or the citizens buried in silence?